The concept is to improve our skills by imitation. So we grab a render from someone that is particularly skillful, or that we just like, and we analyze it and then try to recreate it with our own model and with Blender. And today we're looking at Julien Kaspar. Let me open up his ArtStation. So you should recognize Julien from the Blender Animation Studio. He was still blows my mind, but the single modeler on the Spring short film. So he does great work for them, and he's still with the animation studio doing tutorials for Blender Cloud, which, by the way, this series of Sculpt January from earlier this year was for a speed sculpting workshop on the blender.org, the cloud, Blender Cloud. So check that out if you want to see his particular workflow. But we appreciate Julien for letting us use his artwork to mimic today. So that is exciting. And yeah, so we will get started with that. Anything else I wanted to say? I don't think so. All right, yeah, we'll just jump right into it. Also, actually, there is one more thing I wanted to say. I don't usually recommend this, or prepare for this, but if you want, events. If you want to, you can download the project file to start with me if you want to follow along. That's on this stream page, the cloud icon, the Wrangler start posed.blend. You're welcome to download that, load it up, and follow along if you wish. This should be fairly easy to follow along with if that's your thing. All right, so here is the artwork, and these are Julien developed this kind of style to theme his Sculpt January sculptures, and I found it very striking. I remember seeing them pop up on ArtStation and kind of crawl up the trending list, and it's very rim light centric, which, if you know me, you know I love rim lights. I love strong rim lights. I think they're just a powerful way to accent your sculptures and your models. So you can guess that I would have liked this, and it's actually a fairly simple light setup. But we're gonna do some. We're not just gonna set up lights. We're going to dive into some volumetrics and also add this spark effect, all procedurally. So it should be fun. But I expect this to take maybe an hour and a half kind of range today. But yeah, we'll get started then. I'm gonna use the grease pencil here to analyze this image and kind of frame our mindset so we know how to approach the lighting. And the analysis is important here because to be able to translate what you see in a final render to the technical aspect of recreating that does take a little bit of practice, but those skills are not hard to develop. So make sure I've got annotations. And all right, so first I'm going to kind of look for light sources specifically. And I can narrow this down to about 3. There is a key light, which is white. There's only the 2 colors in the lights that I can tell. There's the bright white and then the bright orange. And so the first one, I'm going to call this the key light, change the color to white, and then hold D to draw some influence from this key light. You can kind of tell that it's coming from the upper left of the image and highlighting the front side of the face as well as the shoulders, but it drops off pretty quickly. So we've got most concentration up top. We've got it in the shoulders, but a little bit on the forearm, but you see a very strong fall off. And I'm going to draw this triangle shape so that, it's strongest up top, but it quickly drops off. All right, so that is fairly indicative of like an area light. And again, when it comes to lighting, I'm a big believer and proponent of gradients make compelling lighting. And so this is definitely evidenced here. So that's the key light. It's fairly underpowered considering how strong the rim lights are. And so that's what comes next. This is going to be the rim white. Just copy that color over. So white rim light you can see on the shoulders and also around the head. Okay, so we're looking around this area. It kind of has a break at the top of the head, and then it continues down the shoulder and arm. All right, so this tells me that there's a rim light focused on the upper half of the character, behind the head, at the shoulders. And it's going to be cranked up really, really high, placed pretty much right behind the character, so the light just creeps over the edges of the model. And that is going to be light number 2. Number 3 is going to be another rim light, and that's the bright orange, kind of the hero light that sets a lot of the overall style of the render. Let's go choose a orange color for this. And yeah, this one goes without explaining, honestly. You can see it focused on the upper half to bottom of the character. It's all defined by an extremely strong orange rim light. And there might be a couple rim lights here because you can see that it seems to be behind the character and oriented a little bit to the screen right. But then we've also got a little bit of a rim light over here, which I do not anticipate being accomplished by one rim light on the right side. So we'll explore that, but by and large, 3 main lights. But there's also some effects that I see in the render that I want to recreate as well. And so they are volumetrics or like fog. So I'll call it fog/volume. And this is white. Maybe bring this out a little bit so you can read all of that. All right, so up at the top, it's pretty subtle, and I like that it's subtle and not overblown. But if we copy this white color, whoops, not what I wanted to do. There we go. In the upper left corner, you can see this kind of broad fog. You should be able to see it in the stream too. But it, to me, suggests that there is a key light coming from the upper left. And what I find artistically that it serves to do is provide a little bit of atmosphere to the render. You know, it's just a black background. And if you leave it plain black, that's not really... It's just lacking, I guess. It's too simple. It's too clear. Whereas you add a little bit of volume, a little bit of fog, a little bit of bloom as well. All of these kind of give the image a little bit more depth, and a touch of atmosphere too. Now, so the white one is pretty subtle. I'll call this volume. I thought I already named this. Volume fog white. And then add another one. This is volume fog orange. And this is a little bit more intense, still subtle overall, but this is focused in the bottom right corner and kind of stretches all the way to the left of the image, but mostly concentrated down here. And when you combine that with the sparks, you get this sort of fiery appearance. So I love these added effects when he didn't have to add them, but like going that extra mile really sells the overall lighting, and we're going to recreate that. And then of course the sparks is the other element that I don't feel like I need to create a layer for. It goes without saying. All right, so that's kind of the analysis. Now I've framed my mindset on how to approach this, and we will get underway. Going to, this is just a UV image editor. I'm sorry, it's not called that anymore, just the image editor. And I'm gonna keep that up for reference down here. And if you are following along or just in general, if you have questions, do not hesitate to stop me and ask so I can clear anything up. But yeah, we'll get started. So this scene did come from a previous light matching exercise. So I've already got, you know, my model in there. It's our Wrangler character posed up against a fence. And is there anything in particular? It does have a camera in the scene. So I'm going to hit 0 on the number pad. Let me turn on screencast keys. Whoops. There we go. There they are. And I want to change the framing a little bit. It's not going to look exactly like Julien's because, you know, his is a single character, doesn't have the fence element involved, but it's going to be close enough. You know, it's not a one-to-one, but it's going to serve the purpose, but I do want to reframe the camera a little bit. So I'm going to select in the view options, lock camera to view, and then I'm just going to zoom in, kind of look at the Wrangler from below. I want to crop off the feet a little bit because in Julien's image, he crops off at the knee. But, you know, there's a, if we maximize that one more time, the whole image sort of fades to a dark color and you don't really you don't really see a hard chop off of the limb. So I'm going to keep that in mind as we go. But I don't want to see a ground. I think that's the real note that I'm thinking. There is no ground plane visible. And so we don't want that visible. Even though we can see it here, we won't see it in the final render, and you'll see when I get there. But we've reframed the image. Still, we're in the kind of right third of the frame. So, you know, it looks good. It kind of matches, you know, the framing of the render. But before I change the angle anymore, let's uncheck lock camera to view. So now I have free range of motion again. And first thing we want to do is add that key light. We'll go in the same sort of order as the analysis. And I will switch to rendered view, make sure that I have Eevee enabled, which it is. So there's some other stuff going on in the scene. It looks like depth of field. That's what's throwing me off. Also, there is no world. So let's go ahead and add a world. And it's going to be black. So we can just turn the strength to 0. And then there was depth of field, so let's turn that off. If we look at Julien's up close, I don't see any evidence of depth of field. Yeah, it looks like everything's really sharp, so we might not need depth of field whatsoever. Or we might add it and take a little artistic license. You know, we're matching this, but really we're trying to learn and apply it in our own way. That's always the goal. Learn. Even if you mimic tutorials or courses, learn, but try to apply it in your own way. That's how you kind of confirm that you've learned and can apply. Anyway, so yeah, let's add an area light now that we've taken care of those camera settings. Shift A light. Wait, where's my? Oh yeah, Shift A light and area light. Okay, we can move that up. We're going to get immediate feedback since this is cycles. I mean, since it is Eevee. And for this, let's figure out the fall off, because that, well, I guess first the angle and then the fall off situation, because we do want to isolate the illumination towards the, you know, kind of lower arm up, most illuminated at the head. So Jake, depth of field doesn't seem to make sense if there's no background. I think I will turn it on at the end just to see kind of the effect. With this character, it might be less noticeable, but since we've got the fence involved, we actually, you know, it can be a nice little extra touch. Kind of what it will serve to do is focus specifically on the character and kind of blur out the fence, since that's not really the thing to pay attention to. But anyway, back to this area light. Got a weird little error. Okay, so this looks pretty close. I might need to turn on custom distance for the fall off, but I know it's coming from this angle. Maybe if I rotate it, let's see, maybe move it further back. Just trying to position this. Okay, this actually looks pretty good to me. All right, let me try increasing the strength, because I want to think also about the fog. The reason I'm moving the light a little further away is that I do want to add that kind of fog effect. And if the light is too close, then it's not positioned correctly to achieve that look. So I want to position it a little more this way. And now for the custom distance, because you can see that we're getting illumination on the bottom half of the fence, also on the legs. So I'm going to enable custom distance and then take this down to like 5 and then kind of dial it in by hand. So you can see that it is decreasing the influence of the light. And now I'm kind of illuminating the fence a little bit more than the character itself. Let me increase the strength a bit, move the light over this way. Okay, a couple other settings to keep in mind. For Eevee shadows, I find that VSM is almost always just a better appearance. Like, it seems like a higher quality shadow calculation. So if we turn that on and off, this is ESM, you can see how more of the character is illuminated, even though it should be in shadow. So if I turn on VSM, keep all the same settings, it just makes more sense. It's not illuminating the half that's in shadow. And the thing that I don't like about this right now is that it is illuminating the fence almost just as much. So let me try and position this. What am I using? Okay, median point, that's good. I'm just not getting any of the left limb right now. Let's go with that. Let's go with that for now. It might not be perfect because the hat is going to cast a shadow on the shoulder, and I'm trying to see that specific shoulder lit up, but maybe I'm being distracted by that, and that's just not going to happen with this particular model, which is fine. That's okay. Yeah, actually, I'm going to leave it like that. And so we talked about the second light being the rim. So let me duplicate this light now. Actually, before I duplicate it, I want to go to the light settings and enable contact shadows. I want to do this before duplication. We can see what that does before and after. It honestly adds a bit of an ambient occlusion effect, but specifically on surfaces that are close together, it adds more believable contact shadows. So we're going to add that and then duplicate and rotate this around. So I hope it's not too dark to understand what's going on here. I know the scene is almost entirely black, but it's kind of the thing when it comes to lighting, this particular scene. So I've positioned this behind the character, maybe a little bit too close if I move it further away. But you can see right away that we get this rim light reminiscent of what we're aiming for. I just need to increase the strength, maybe significantly, kind of rotating this to point directly at the camera. And it might help to turn off our overlays so we can just see the pure lighting information and none of the widgets to distract us. And let's change the size, because when you change the size, let me increase the strength first. Let's go up to like 200. We want this to be significantly brighter. How about 500? There we go. When I increase the size, you'll see that it starts to incorporate just more of the models in general, where if I go back down, you can see it starts to concentrate more in the location of the light. So I think this looks pretty good, actually. We're getting both sides, the right side and the left side. Nice, strong rim light. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Turn it on and off, perhaps, to see the contribution, the overall contribution. Now, there is a little bit of, well, there's a bright rim light on the bottom board of the fence, which I don't think really, I have to make a decision, like, is that okay because the model doesn't exactly match the model in the reference? Or should I try and change the distance so that it concentrates more on just the shoulders? When I do that, I need to also increase the strength to like 1,000. All right, so now it's less influential on the bottom board, but still pretty strong on the shoulders, but really not strong enough. So let's just increase the strength. I can get a little too far, like the custom distance thing is obviously not physically accurate. It's just a manual artistic choice. So if I turn the distance down too much, but then increase the strength too much, it could look very unbelievable. You know, we're in a stylized realm, so it's not that big of a deal, but still just something to keep in mind. Now, the only issue I could potentially see, this looks good on the shoulder. I like that, but on the upper left of the character's head in the reference, there's this nice rim light up top, and I don't really see that in ours. So what if I duplicate this rim light and try to concentrate it up here? Maybe turn on our widgets again so I can see what's happening here. Maybe that's not what I wanted. Maybe I grabbed the wrong light. This one. Let's turn that on and off. So it's illuminating the hat a little bit more, but also illuminating the side of the arm. Let me turn that on and off. I'm not sure that's really worth it. I don't know, I might put a pin in that one. Yeah, I don't think that's really worth it right now. I'll keep it simpler and then come back if I need to. But we will duplicate the area. Let's name these a little more intentionally. Let's call this one the rim white, and the first one the key, which I guess key white as well. Go ahead and add these to a collection, new collection, call them lights. Okay, and then duplicate the rim light, and quickly we will change the color to that bright orange. All right, we want this really, really saturated and really, really bright. Oh wait, I really kind of, I'm gonna backtrack on the distance. I'm gonna increase that back up, because we don't want that same kind of effect. This is a more broad rim light, not so concentrated like the white one. And let's take a look at the color. Being so bright, this orange feels a little bit too yellowy, so let's go to the red spectrum. Okay, now we're getting pretty close. Yeah, that's actually looking quite good. Let's turn off our overlays. Let's see here. I also like to turn on my camera settings in viewport display. In Passepartout, let's turn that all the way up. I'd never like to see beyond the camera frame. All right, so let me think through this. Let me compare. We have a really nice, strong orange light that matches our reference, but it does get out of hand in a few places. Like, for example, in the bottom, we're getting a lot more glow from the bottom side of the character than we see in the reference. And the reason for this is the ground plane is a default material of Blender. So if we click on that, there is no material, so it inherits the default. So we need to add one and turn off the, what am I trying to say? The reflectivity. So ground, we want to turn off reflectivity 100%, which is specular. Turn that completely off. That didn't seem to do anything, did it? There we go. But also diffuse color. So it's close to white by default, and that's why we're getting this really bright color. And since the rest of the model, I do want there to be a little bit of reflectivity, just because I like that, I guess. So I'm leaving the default on everything else, but on the floor, I don't want that being picked up in the reflections, essentially. So we can turn that color down to black, and now it looks much more similar to the reference. And yeah, that's actually looking pretty good. Well, it looks really good, I think, on the character. Now that I'm looking at it, I think maybe my light orientation for the key light is not ideal, because we're getting a lot more illumination on the left side of the character, further down into the legs, and we definitely don't see that in our reference. So, I'm also fighting with the hat a little bit, but let's see what I can do if I can kind of orient this differently. Okay, so this sort of limits the illumination, which is what I was after. I think that looks pretty good. Let's turn off the overlays to a comparison. The fence is still being illuminated significantly more than what I want. Trying to remember, it's this doesn't quite look like even the R&D that I did. I might be kind of tripping myself up because I want to be close to that, and I just might need to forget it and just do this one unique to this stream. There we go. Maybe turn the distance down. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. Yeah, I don't want to get hung up on the key light. I don't love how illuminated this fence is, because it even gets, we have 0 illumination on the right fence. So it kind of looks like on the right, like the model is split in half, where there's illumination on the left half of the character and 0 on the right side, and that's just bothering me a little bit. I don't remember fighting with this hat quite so much. Okay, that looks better, actually. But then the rim light, if we turn that on and off, it's really illuminating that other post and the fence. If I move it over, though, or maybe change the size. Okay, let's go with that. There's still illumination on the fence post, but that's okay. But this does bring us to, in the reference, you know, we do see this rim light kind of focused on the sword, which to me says there is probably a second orange light. So let's do that. Let's duplicate this one, move it over to the right, the screen left half, and then turn it way down in terms of strength. Way down. There we go. That harkens back to the reference. Let's look at it without overlays. And yeah, I think that's looking close enough. Yeah, I think it's, I'm getting a little nitpicky with it, but I think it's matching the essence of the reference. So we're learning good things about lighting. I am, at least. It's funny, this is the third time I've done it, but none of the 3 times were exactly the same. So we're going to call that done with the lighting of the lamps themselves. Next, we can move into the glow kind of fog atmosphere type effect. Save, thank you, save police. Save as, record, Wrangler. Let me do this. REC, there we go. Thank you for that. That would have been a major buzzkill, as some of you have experienced before. All right, but crisis averted. Now for the fog. There's a couple ways that we can achieve the fog. Oh, first question. Can we at some point send our own tries, doing it simultaneously the way I like while listening, watching you do? Can we at some point send our own tries? You mean your own lighting, your own light matching? Because definitely you can do that. There's a forum thread about this that has been started a while back. Let me jump over to my browser and show you if that's what you're talking about. So on this page, the live stream page, go to the forum thread. And this is a thread that I started to encourage everyone to try this. So there are several examples here of trying to match the lighting. Definitely you are welcome and encouraged to post your own attempts here. Just go to the latest page and add a reply. Feel free to mention me and I'll take a look at it. But yeah, this is kind of the thread where this idea was born. If that wasn't your question, just correct me and I'll try to answer it better. From Sheila, if I press 0 for the camera view, everything becomes vague. Oh, that must be the depth of field. If you're using the file that I provided, let me save this real quick. If you're using the file that I provided, which was this one, and you look in the camera and the rendered view, yeah, there's going to be depth of field on the camera, especially if you move the camera around. Sorry, some of you have already seen this. But yeah, if you move the camera around, it gets super vague. Just turn off in the camera settings, depth of field. Uncheck that and it should clear back up. For this render and the light match, we're not using depth of field yet, but we might turn it on and experiment. All right, let's go back to the rendered version and our progress. The fog, right, so there's a couple ways that we can achieve the fog effect. Number one is through bloom. So I'm going to turn that on in the Eevee settings. And right away, just adding bloom, you know, it's that atmosphere. It's kind of like a haze, you know, and you can be really thick with the haze and overzealous with it, or you can be subtle. I think that you need to at least have a little bit of subtle haze going on. And I see that evidenced in the reference specifically, but a lot of times I like to add it just in general as kind of like a rule. but I think it's a little bit too strong. Let me dial down the intensity a bit. All right, something more like that. But, okay, so remember that floor, how it was reflecting the light? Well, we can kind of use that to our advantage here for a quick and dirty effect. If I choose my ground plane and back to the material, and for the base color, as I bring that up, you'll start to see we get this glow effect from the bottom of the floor. And that is similar to what we see in the reference. And it's because the light is glowing so heavily on the floor, even though it's outside of the camera frame, we still get the effects of the glow. And if we want that in the upper left corner, we can add a mesh UV sphere. And I'm going to put that just out of range of the camera frame, a new material, and this is going to be an emission. Swap out the principled for emission. Where is it? Here, alphabetical. And now you can see, as we increase the strength, we get that glow effect up top. Now, in the reference, it's really, really subtle, so we would probably want like a low value, maybe 1.5, something like that. But yeah, this achieves similarly the same effect. But that's nowhere near as fun as using volumetrics, which is what I want to show you now, which I think is probably overkill. I don't know that I don't know that Julien would have used. I don't know if he did or not use volumetrics, but we're kind of departing what I see in the reference, and we're going to have a little bit of fun with volumes. So I'm going to turn off the sphere. Also turn off the, I'm going to leave bloom on, but I'm going to turn off the base color so we don't get any from the floor. I don't know. I might add a little bit of that left. I like to know that it's an option. But to create a volume, we're going to add a mesh cube. And what's the best way to visualize this? Maybe do it in wireframe. So the cube, oh, I have my overlays turned off. What I want to do with the cube is something also to keep in mind about volumes in Eevee is they are limited to a square shape. All right, so if I add a new material here and we call it volume fog, and switch out the principled BSDF for principled volume. Now at this point, I should really switch over to the shading workspace. So I'm going to do that. Don't need a browser window or a image editor, but I do want my reference back to look at. Image editor, and grab that image already. Excellent. What was I talking about? The volume itself, switch to rendered view. Where is my cube? This one. Yeah, this is my volume. I better name it. Volume .000. Okay, so I don't really want a square volume here. If we add, we've already added the principal volume. Can we even see? Oh, it's in surface. I want to add that to volume. There we go. All right, so we add that, and it kind of fills the whole scene with extreme haze or extreme smoke. And that's not really what I want. I want to isolate the volume into the bottom right corner, and then another volume into the upper left corner. So to accomplish that, I want to use a gradient texture because we are limited to the square, to the cube. But if I scale up and add a texture, gradient texture, switch to the spherical type. Also Control T, I've got the node wrangler enabled, and Control T will automatically add a texture coordinate and mapping node. I want the object coordinates. And now when we plug that into the density, you'll see that we get a spherical shape. It's kind of hard to visualize because if you just plug in the gradient texture by itself, it's just black. It's like nothing is happening. But you got to keep in mind that this is a 3D texture, and there is a little sphere of color hidden inside of this cube volume, which you can visualize once we plug it into the density. And so now we can see the evidence of this sphere. However, if we hide the ground plane, that's what I should do. If we hide that, now you can see more evidence. And even further to iterate this, for some reason I feel like you just don't believe me that it's a sphere in the middle, so I'm really trying to make a point. And where is world? And if we increase the strength here to like 1. Now you can see there's a perfect sphere in there. That was a lot of explanation for that. But we can add a converter color ramp and then control how big the sphere is. We can even scale it down, make it more of a flattened type sphere, or oval rather. Or we can also just scale the object itself. So now we've got this spherical volume that I can scale and position according to the camera. All right, so something like this, I can position as I want. But I want to turn off the world. Remember, we don't want that gray. And I also, what else did I turn off? The ground, that's right. Okay, so this, now we have a very dense circular spherical volume in the bottom right corner. This is nice, but I don't want it to be that dense. We really want it to be more like this, something like that. It's picking up a little bit of the white rim light. So if I don't want that, we can change the color to be purely orange. All right, it's still way more intense than what we see in the reference. But this is kind of a consistent volume, very hazy. I want to have a little more fun with it, and we want to add a texture to the volume. And so I have been doing this a lot lately. I realized probably really late to the party that you could use a color to mix vector coordinates. So I can take a texture, noise texture, for example, use object coordinates for that, and then a color mix RGB. So you can take this purple value, mix it with a yellow color node, and it's going to work fine. All right, so you can see just as the mixture, this is the pure, what do you call it? Just the pure consistent volume. And as I include the noise texture, it starts to break up and look a little more like smoke. But we can change this. I like overlay more often than not. And yeah, so we have control that way. We can also increase the detail. All right, so that's probably not going to be too visible unless we increase the volumetric tile size. So if we go to 2, you can start to see more of that spindly type fog. And if we add a converter color ramp and kind of increase the contrast, you can see what that's doing. Now, we are departing pretty far from the reference, but I still feel like there's a little bit of breakup. And that's kind of what sent me down this path. But it is really, really fun to play with the volumetrics. We just need to, once we have this kind of effect, then we can simply turn down the, let's see, what about the color? If we just turn down the strength of the color, the brightness of the color, you know, it leaves us more with the subtle nature similar to the reference. Cool. Holy smokes, that's neat. Yeah, I agree. I've been doing a lot of volumetric work lately. A side project, I've been doing clouds and animating clouds, modeling like clouds with Eevee volumetrics. And it's just crazy how you get that almost for free very, very rapidly compared to cycles. Volumetrics were always something I never touched because I didn't want to wait on the render time, but this makes it very accessible and really, really fun. Now, you can see as I rotate around, it's evidence in the camera that in our reference, there's clearly fog in front. Sorry, the stream might have froze for a second. OBS seemed to freeze on me. If everything's still okay, can I get one more all green? I just noticed that it kind of froze for a second. But you can notice in the reference that there is definitely fog in front of the character's legs, whereas in our render, it's not. It seems it did. Okay, we're okay. Thank you. If we rotate around, there's fog in the back half, but not on the front. And I believe this is due to, if we go select the rim light, I really should name these. This is orange 2. And then orange 01. Okay. So orange 01, I believe it's the custom distance is the problem. Yeah, so as I increase that, we start to get more fog in the front. Not the size. Distance. There we go. Now we're starting to get more fog, but it is blowing out the overall image, so maybe the strength is too high. Let's go to 5,000, 4,000. Okay, let me just turn off the volume. Okay, it does seem to be in front. We see evidence of it being in front. Okay, I think we're good there. But yeah, so we've kind of created this orangey glow in the bottom right, and we can of course, you know, scale it up as we want, position it as we wish, you know, kind of situation. Now, if you start to see the evidence of the lights themselves, for this particular scene, since it's really strong rim light, we can kind of move them just to be behind our model so we don't see that quite so obviously. I think that kind of ruins the effect of it. But also moving the volume further down. There we go. All right, so the same sort of thing in the upper left corner. Let's duplicate this volume. And I want to move it, probably scale it down. But I want it to be in the upper left corner, and I don't want it to be orange at all. I want it to be, I need to duplicate this material and desaturate it completely. There we go. Maybe even add a little bit of like blue to it. Turn off our overlays. And let's see, how can I get, the problem is the light, I probably just need to break it up less. So if I turn that down, just ever so slightly break up that particular noise. And then the color is a little too strong. The one up in the upper left is much less strong in terms of the density of the volume. So I'm going to turn that down, the density of the effect overall. All right, now we've got a little bit coming from where the key light source is. And this kind of takes care of the volume. But if you haven't played with volumes in 2.8 Eevee yet, definitely try it. It adds, I almost add it to all my renders now, ever so slightly, including, if I jump back to the other live stream that's happening in October. Where is that? Yeah, the gravestone. I used it here as well. You can see it kind of filling like the ground, kind of like for ground fog. It just is so much fun adding volumes to your renders. Highly recommend it. So yeah, we went over that particularly. The last aspect of the render that we want to match is these sparks that we see. It adds this really nice kind of fiery effect to the thing. So we are going to do this procedurally with simply an alpha mapped plane. And I'm going to look in the camera view, hit Shift A, add a mesh plane, and then I want to align this to our view. Okay, so now we see that plane. I'm just going to scale it up and then move it in front of the character in its Z local space, so GZZ twice. As I say that, I realized I didn't have the screencast keys on. There we go. All right, so we've got this plane, and I'm going to hit New Material and call it Sparks. All right, this one is going to be all procedural. We're going to start with another noise texture. So texture, noise texture, and again, object coordinates. I've been favoring object coordinates lately rather than the generated. But I think because I've just worked on some stuff that is rigged and it can work better with object rather than generated, but small point. For this, it really doesn't matter, which it really just affects the scale, frankly, how the scales work. But anyway, I like object, and we've got that plugged into the noise texture. So if we plug that, Shift Control click on the noise, you can see what that looks like. It's colored, which I don't want. I want it black and white. It's going to become an alpha map. So converter color ramp. And we're going to really crush these values. All right, we want them to kind of converge in the upper third. All right, so this is going to leave us with these sort of spark-like beginnings. And we can adjust the scale, like crank it up. Also adding the detail will break things up. You can see how that works. But for this, I actually want to leave the detail pretty low, something like this. And the further you go up on the spectrum, kind of the lower frequency of sparks that we have. And then we can plug this in as the alpha channel. into our principled BSDF, plug that up. But of course, by default, our Eevee materials do not handle transparency. We have to go to the material itself in the settings, choose a blend mode. Now I'm going to use alpha hashed in this case. And the reason really to use alpha hashed in my experience is that depth of field works funky if you don't use alpha hashed. It works funky with like alpha blend. So alpha hashed, if we want to include depth of field, it should work a little bit better. All right, so we've got these sparks which kind of disappeared because they're still using shading information. And the plane was only illuminated in the upper left-hand side, so we can turn off base color and instead add an emission value into the orange spectrum, kind of like this. And do I have depth of field? No, they just look kind of blurred. But the emission, if you want to increase the strength of the emission, which I want it to appear like it's glowing, I'm going to take the value above 1. So if we go to 2 or even 5, they'll start to look more glowy like we see in the reference. So we've got kind of the pieces of this puzzle set up, but we just need to dial in the size of the sparks. So for one, let's... well, we can do it a couple ways, right? So we can kind of scale down the texture. You can do it that way. But the problem with that is that we have way too many sparks. We want them, ultimately when we look, it's kind of concentrated in the bottom right corner. So maybe we can rotate this plane around and kind of move it like this. But then there's a really hard fall off. So let me undo. I'm going to undo to where I have big sparks again. Now if I scale down and then position these, I create a couple different planes. Then we kind of have these nice little points that kind of feel like a noise version. I don't know if that made sense as it came out of my mouth. But anyway, we have a couple options. I think that the density is a little too dense. So let's take that down. There we go. Plane, rotate this around. And then if you want to concentrate more sparks in a certain area, just duplicate the plane, rotate it a little bit different, and duplicate again until you have those sparks. All right, so now we've got enough sparks in the location that we want, but they're too blobby. If we look in the reference, some of them have these nice stretch kind of shapes. And so to achieve that, we'll simply use another noise texture, just like we did before. Duplicate this, use the object coordinates, and we will mix the vector. That's what we did earlier. So we'll do that again. Shift A, color mix. Give it a chance to compile and save. Overlay is the type that I want. I think it's slowing down a little bit, and I think it's because I left my volumetric tile count a little too high. Or the tile size, the lower the value, the more high frequency the noise is, the volume is. So let's go back to 8, and I think that should solve some of my problems. All right, now with this texture plugged in, we're getting more stretched type shapes. And we can, dial this in. Stuff like, ooh, that looks good, actually. Yeah, I think that looks really nice. Overall, maybe there's too many sparks, so I can simply go up on the spectrum. And maybe the scale is too high, so let me go down to like 2. Additionally, we can scale. We have all kinds of options in the node editor. We can scale in the X value. Man, you can even get, look at this. This is kind of like animating sparks really easily. Yeah, so you move the scale values around, and yeah, I'm kind of happy with that. Yeah, and then you've got multiple planes. Anyway, this could probably be refined into a more like only like fewer shader nodes perhaps, and not needing to duplicate the planes, but also being Eevee, it's so easy just to duplicate and kind of position all of that manually. You have a lot of control. So yeah, that is that actually happened maybe a little faster than I expected. This is kind of yeah, this is where I wanted to get with the match. Let's see. Are there any other questions? Oh, I did want to talk about depth of field. So we don't have depth of field involved. Also, you know, rabbit trail. You know, if you have these planes, you can kind of rotate them differently and start to create a little more of a 3D effect if you wanted. Anyway, that's a possibility. So yeah, the depth of field. I don't see any evidence that there's depth of field in Julien's image, but if we want to add that for artistic preference, I think it could make a little more sense in this image, in our particular model, mostly to blur out the fence because that's not really the focus. So if we select the camera, enable depth of field in the camera settings, all right, we're going to get really blurred out because the focus distance is not properly set. So we can do this manually, or we can visibly see. You need to turn on in viewport display the limits. That's what will show you the actual focus. You can dial that in to be, you know, the front of the Wrangler character. Something like this. Of course, the stronger the depth of field effect, the blurriness, then it makes the overall scene feel small. So I think that the f-stop value is too high, is too low, and therefore too high of an effect. So let's go to like 1. If we turn that on and off, maybe like 0.7. There we go, 0.5 maybe. All right, so I think for this particular situation, depth of field is a nice addition, but you certainly don't have to if you don't want to. Yeah. Oh, Rita, you're getting ideas. You can use those flying sparks, spattering paint on a surface. Yeah, absolutely. Glad that your brain's churning on that. Anything else? Oh, I also use this effect again for, I kind of, you know, last week I spent most of the week just trying to come up with stream topics and research and develop. And just like here, I use the same concept of the different planes with a procedural texture to create the rain. So that's something that I've just been playing around with recently, and I see a lot of potential for it, especially in still images like this. It might, the effect might break down when it gets into 3D and motion, but for still frames, like it's a really fast way compared to like grabbing an image of rain online and like trying to work out the alpha, trying to make it big enough so it fits the resolution of your render, all that kind of stuff. Doing it procedurally is pretty nice. Let's see. If there are any last minute questions, let me know. But otherwise, that was it's kind of a shorter stream. I didn't expect to get there as quick as we did. But yeah, I mean, I think Julien, I again appreciate Julien for letting us mimic this style. He's done several themed that way. So if we go back to his ArtStation, you know, it's a versatile style that where you can change the rim light color and get a white, I mean a yellow type of effect here. He's got the cool triangle shape kind of silhouetting the head, which is pretty neat. But yeah, I really like this style. I recommend checking out all of these from Julien. And yeah, pretty neat. So that is going to be the third light match in the series. Someone else already asked about it, but if you want to do some of these yourself, I highly recommend and encourage you to add them to the match your favorite lighting thread. And show me what you can do. Show me how close you're getting to your matches. And that, again, is linked on this stream page that you're watching right now. So I believe that that's it. And Blender did not act out, which is nice. Question, can you please zoom in on that part of the sparks, you mean? Sorry, I saw that question late. Sheila, if you can tell me what you're asking me to zoom in on, I will happily do it. Suppose I could also render the image if it's, make sure it's 1080p. Save the file, render image. There we go. Nice. Shout out to the Discord community server. I like it. The plane with sparks, I have it completely messed up. Oh, so if you're asking about the, I mean, I might as well provide the node setup too, like the whole blend file. So this is the node setup. I guess you're probably following along. Hopefully that clears things up. But yeah, I mean, I might as well provide the .blend once we finish streaming. But if that is it, then yeah, I think we'll call that a day. Sorry, it's kind of a quick stream, but it was fun. I mean, I love these light matching things. If you want to get better at lighting, it's kind of been a way for me to really improve my own set, because by doing this, I kind of remember key aspects of it and store that in my like mental tool belt that I can bring into my own lighting, my custom lighting situation. So I find a lot of value in mimicking for the sake of improvement with lighting, especially. But yeah, that was fun. That's going to be all for today. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you in October for the gravestone live stream. We'll sculpt that, and let's see what else. Look out for a stream from Wayne. That should come up very soon. I'm supposed to talk with him through the whole live streaming process tonight. And there's a few other streams with Gonzo's doing one. Wes has one as well. So keep an eye on the schedule, and I will see you in October. So thanks, everybody. I will see you next time. Goodbye.